Titrations are performed to determine the amount or concentration of an unknown. Before you start a titration, what you need is the volume of the unknown and the concentration of the known.
To determine the unknown, you need the final volume and the initial volume.
This is how you read a burette. Unlike the graduated cylinder, the values go up as you go down. So this would be 0 and it's 50 at the bottom. So this meniscus is at 1.50 milliliters, whereas on a graduated cylinder it would be at 2.50. To calculate the volume delivered, you would subtract the initial volume from the final volume. So to read the meniscus on a burette, first you have to be eye level. And you would read the burette from the lowest part. So you would not read it up here, but below here. So this would be 1.50 milliliters. Also, when you're filling the burette, it cannot go above the 0 mark. And when you're adding the volume into the flask, the level cannot go below the 50 mark.
A burette is primed by placing about 5 milliliters of the titrant in the burette. Carefully hold the burette horizontally over a sink and rotate it so that the entire inner surface is coated with the titrant. Place the primed burette in the burette clamp. Place a waste beaker under the burette and allow the titrant to drain through the burette stopcock to rinse them. Discard the waste rinse solution appropriately. Repeat priming procedure at least 2 more times.
Before starting the titration process, I first took the initial volume, which was 2.28 milliliters. Then I added the sodium hydroxide solution drop by drop until the KHP dissolved in water. I did this until the solution turned a light pink, which denoted the endpoint of the solution. The final volume was 7.79 milliliters, so the volume delivered was 5.51 milliliters.
I started by observing the initial volume, which was 0.1 milliliters. I then began the titration process by slowly adding sodium hydroxide from the burette into the flask, which contained the KHP solution. I continued to add sodium hydroxide to the KHP solution slowly until I observed the endpoint, which was indicated by the solution turning a faint pink color. My final volume was 5 milliliters. The volume delivered was 4.9 milliliters.
I began by reading and recording the initial volume of the burette, which was 7.79 milliliters. I then opened the stopcock to allow the sodium hydroxide to flow out while swirling the flask until the liquid turned pink. I read and recorded the final volume of the burette, which was 13.20 milliliters, leaving the volume delivered to be 5.41 milliliters.
To begin my titration, I observed my initial volume to be 2.28 milliliters. Then I slowly released small amounts of sodium hydroxide into the flask containing the KHP solution. I repeatedly added sodium hydroxide and paused to mix the solution in the flask to watch for an endpoint. I reached the endpoint when the solution changed to and stayed a faint pink color. I observed my final volume to be 7.79 milliliters. Subtracting 2.28, my initial volume, from that final volume, I get my volume delivered, which was 5.51 milliliters.